Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic:
which new Epstein file finding made you go, wait, what, and why? At this point, the only thing that would surprise me is anyone involved facing any consequences. The fact that this much was even released. Right, I wonder how all these files hadn't caught fire yet. There's a lot of unsubstantiated stuff in there. The FBI may be run by an incompetent sycophant, but they are still an intelligence agency. They are trying to muddy the waters and give an opportunity for people to claim everything in there is made up horseshit, particularly the parts that pertain to a certain diaper-shitting dictator. The fact that the 4chan board, poll, was created within a days of a meeting between J.E. and Christopher Poole makes you wonder even more about the origins of stuff like Canon and Pizzagate. Ye man, what the fuck? Email time stamps between the guy who made the 4chan political board and Epstein. They meet, Mood makes the political board, and a ton of culture-altering garbage starts spilling from there and doesn't stop. I didn't have Epstein was Q on my fucking bingo card, but his suicide lines up with that 2019 LUL in Q drops. God, I fucking hate QAnon. Epstein ties to 4chan is unexpected but makes perfect sense. Isn't that one of the original platforms QAnon began on? I saw a documentary about the site owners, and how there was major speculation they were Q since Q clearly took inspiration for Pizzagate from Epstein. Now I wonder if she was Q, or maybe he fed that information to the person who was Q. 4chan is where Q started, and that HBO doc already proved who Q was using IP addresses, tons and tons of circumstantial evidence, and his own accidental admission, and there were actually multiple Qs. The original Q had his account hacked by the guys who did the majority of the psyops, Q's words, not mine. As far as Xia is concerned, while I'm not aware of that report with 4chan, it's been long thought that he was a spy for Israel, not saying I believe it, but there is some somewhat compelling circumstantial evidence, so if somehow one of the Qs got tangled with Epstein, it could be another connection to some sort of intelligence agency. I tend not to believe that Q worked directly with an intelligence agency, but a foreign one would make some sense, and if you can connect Xia to Q, I think it strengthens the evidence that they were both connected to, possibly multiple, foreign governments. Edit, QAnon was Ron Watkins and his father for those who keep asking, and while the story itself is interesting, he isn't very interesting in the sense that his followers thought he was connected to American intelligence, and he most definitely was not. My anecdotal opinion is that Ron, not his father, was the true leader of QAnon. Yes, his father and at least one other person were probably direct contributors, and yes, Steve Bannon probably discussed strategy with him, but I believe Ron to have been the main driving force. Edit 2, yes, I mean 4chan. Don't at me. The original, first Q, the one whose work everyone is less familiar with, started on 4chan. Ron and Jim stole the account and sent the followers to 8chan so that they could seize control permanently, as Ron's father owned it. The girl who mentioned she was sarred by Epstein and witnessed orgies with young girls that Clinton and Trump participated in. The noteworthy thing is she mentioned she and her friend nearly got sarred by twin brothers named Alon and Oren but escaped, and another brother of theirs named Tal raped her best friend. It's significant because these names were never really public, or if they were, not really known by the masses. Oren, Tal, and Aiken Alexander had a sex trafficking trial begin a few days ago in NYC. It lends credibility to the files itself as these aren't celebrity names or people who anyone would just be able to throw in there. These were unknowns to the public and it turns out, they're serial rapists. So why would she bring them up but then lie about Epstein, Trump, and Clinton? If these three are found guilty, it wouldn't be shocking if all three committed suicide on the same day while locked up. One of the most surprising reveals, despite years of building surveillance infrastructure, apparently the FBI has difficulty calling people back if they don't leave their contact information. All this surveillance imposed on us to fight pedophiles and terrorists when both were hiding in the White House, Mar-a-Lago and luxury yachts. Sometime you wonder if they really are after pedophiles and terrorists or something else. One of the girl's personal journal after Ghislaine forced her to close her eyes while she gave birth and they took the child. Claimed as stillborn but the child mother believes it was alive. And now we know where Trump's obsession with claiming people get post-birth abortions comes from. Ugh had the exact same thought. Like okay Looney Tunes, no one's killing babies right after birth. Until, fairly, recently I'd honestly thought, or hoped I suppose, that certainly that couldn't be more projection, even though I'm also aware that that's just about everything out of his mouth. Disappointed. I just became a father a few months ago. This is so disgusting to think someone can do this to a mother and her newborn, and absolutely terrifying for the mother and child both. There should be fast-track capital punishment for such convictions, especially considering the mother was still a child herself. Holy shit, that reads like a Holocaust journal. Robin Leach strangling a child to death wasn't on my radar, I must admit. But it is all horrific and, even if only partially true, the purest evidence yet that it is the elites versus the people. We have to take our necks out from under their feet. It turns out Leach not only reported on the lifestyles of the rich and famous, but he also lived among them. Face vomiting, his access. How this man managed to attract people and the horror of it all. The why isn't in the files. It's in the fact that no one is going to jail for any of it. No billionaires will be hurt. I can only assume it's because they need a rock-solid case with no mistakes made to fight their lawyers. Right. What a lot of people don't seem to understand is that much of this list is initial claims that have or have not been verified through investigation. Not saying the things in it aren't true, but this list by itself isn't enough for conviction. For as much of what's in it may be true, there's certainly stuff in it that isn't. Frankly, if even 1% of it is true, it's still horrifying. Ashley Massaro, the former WWE superstar, being a victim. It's well known that she went through some horrible stuff while in WWE that led to her suicide, but also knowing she went through all of this pre-WWE is extremely fucked up. I just assume Vince was pal of Epstein. He was just that exploitative and abusive. It's always the ones you most suspect. The fact that these poor exploited victims will never get justice. Worse, they watch as half the country supports their abusers regardless of any evidence. This is the most heartbreaking aspect of it all. The injustice is insane and makes you realize just how fucking awful people really are. Some of the details are horrible, like the child rape auctions, the baby incubator girl's diary, or Trump fingering girls to announce the tightness to the bidders. But watching half the country in full support of the rich pedophiles is mind-blowing. Republicans have families, wives and daughters and sisters. Yet, they simply don't care. They fully support one of the most vile, hateful child rapists the world has ever seen. Add in their full support of the ICE Gestapo death squads roaming around, and it's just soul-crushing. The victim's diary, where she talks about being used as an incubator for Joe and GM, that she gave birth multiple times. Those files hurt to read. She wrote in code. It was heartbreaking. It is. The code is fairly simple by modern cryptography standards and easily broken by anyone with training in actual cryptography, but for a teen, it was relatively complex. It's essentially a form of substitution cipher. It looks like a columnar or rail fence style citadel variant where the letters are stacked. To read it, you must read the top and bottom letters of each pair together. It uses a specific structural trick common in casual, secret notes, interleaving or using a grid-based cipher where the message is read vertically or by alternating lines. At times, they strengthen the code by substituting names for code words. I say strengthen because I will note that it's not actually cryptographically secure. A one-time pad would, for instance, actually be unbreakable provided the key was hidden and not reused. For example, if a vertical pair is L over F, it forms if. It's top then bottom on each row. Example from actual diary: SSRYEFETEEHNSAPNHNOR OORJFRYHSTIGHPEWEYU BDHC Beg Vienio Prile OY Anvronye Mount Puela. Decoded. Sorry Jeffrey, these things happen when your body has never been given time to properly heal. Source: PG. 4 https://www.justice.gov/epstein/files/dataset%2012/EFTA0273139.pdf. You should read Virginia Giuffre's memoir, Nobody's Girl. This book was so hard to read. She had such a tragic life. I am in awe of her strength though. I read this earlier today and I had a nap and I had nightmares about this. These poor women. These poor children who are now women. We talk about the island non-stop when all of these crimes were also happening in NYC and Florida. And London, Paris, and Epstein's Zorro Ranch in NM, which we don't talk about enough. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick emailing Jeffrey with a list of ages he's bringing, all under 18. The Secretary of Commerce people, the same Lutnick whose sons bought up all the tariff debts so when it is deemed illegal and has to be paid back by the government they will get billions in taxpayers' dollars. That Lutnick, the Lutnick who donated to the ballroom along with other men mentioned by Ghislaine Maxwell in her DOJ interview. The child abuse stuff is obviously terrible, but it's the Bannon texts that get me. The right harps on about deep state, shadow government shit, and that's all him. After reading through those, I have zero faith in any of our government leadership. Bannon was also key to making Gamergate a thing and an early adopter for using forums and online spaces to spread agitprop and conspiracy. I don't think he even had any clue just how successful it would be, but he, among others, tapped into a potent well of angry dumbasses who don't have any clue how played they were. I remember an interview in which Bannon talked about manipulating young men in online games by making them feel like Heros with millions of friends instead of just Dave the accountant. Makes so much sense with Epstein's involvement. A young woman giving birth and having the baby tossed into Lake Michigan in front of her is at the top of my WTF list. Remember when Trump was ranting about post-birth abortions, how the doctors show the baby to the mother and then murder the baby in front of her? It just seemed weird back then, but now we know. It's always projection. Every accusation is a confession. Was she actually a young woman, or was she just a girl? I thought she was a minor. Referring to children as young women is yet another way to minimize what they did. All of them were underaged, except it seems some Russian prostitutes. But if they got pregnant, they were underaged. The level of evil here is historic.